I got the horse right here, the name is Paul Revere, and here's a guy that says if the weather's clear, can do. This guy says the horse can do. If he says the horse can do, can do.
Okay, we have a special on the Ultimate Sports Network. We are going to talk horse racing. And if you listen to the little preamble there, you know that my view on horse racing is stuck back in the 1940s. So that's why I ran music from the 1940s. Okay, we know what we know, but we don't know what we know. So, Mr. Farmer, welcome. Mr. Horse Racing himself. As you can tell, we've got all our horse racing in the background. Oh, that's Muhammad Ali. Louisville. Okay, that works. Okay. We're gonna really not break it down, but we're gonna get an idea of where we stand. We still have a few weeks to go, but we're getting closer. Prep races are pretty much done. So we have an idea of who should be there, where they're gonna go, how they're gonna get there. We still don't know post positions, jockeys, all that stuff hadn't been factored in yet, but we got a basic idea. So let's look at the prep races instead of doing it a different way. When it used to be graded stakes earnings, now it's points. And the way I was looking at this is, the earlier races that you had back last year, in the fall of last year, they were 10 points for a win, 4 points for place, 2 points for show, and 1 for fourth. Okay, that doesn't add up a lot, but some of these horses are racked up points from that. And as you get closer to Derby Day, then it's more like 100 points for a win. So how important are some of these prep races early? Should you even be involved in them, or is it just something that's like, well, I'm gaining experience? Or is it, if I can win the Arkansas Derby, I'm cool?
Wow, that's a great question. I really think it depends on.
About time.
Right. I think it depends on the owners, and then the owners connecting with the trainers to go, let's assess the horse first, right? I think you got to assess the talent that you have. And like, for instance, you look at somebody like Essential Quality or Hot Rod Charlie, I'm sure, or Concert Tour, for instance, Bob Baffert has to say, hey, here's what I'm going to talk to the owners. Then we got Joe Rosario as well riding. And we know from earlier since, as a 2-year-old, we saw what this horse can do, all right? We know even if on a bad day or a bad year, we're going to be top 10. And when they assess that talent, then they go, okay, now how many points do we need to become eligible for the Derby? What makes sense for us to compete to get enough wins? And I think that goes there. And that's how the more top tier talented horses and their folks do it. The other folks that may be just trying to get in, I think they're more calculated as to say, we need to maybe look at some things, not so much when we run, but how can we get more points? Because for them, it's about the points. I mean, you can say, well, we're not going to run till Derby or whatever. And then, of course, what's going on with the training? I mean, you saw some horses now that have been running. They go like, well, we think he's good now. We've seen enough. We got enough points. You don't have to be first. That's kind of like NBA basketball playoffs. Everybody's talking about, well, they got the number 1 seed. It don't mean anything. If you don't perform when it matters, the main thing is to get in. And I think a lot of the maybe the less marquee horses and their teams and their owners are looking at ways to get in. So back in the day, I think we saw more of a focus on, okay, yeah, well, you need to, if you want to get in, you better win the Santa Anita Derby. You want to get in, you better win, you better win the Arkansas Derby because they had more prestige. But now it's all about the points.
And I was going to say, you used to say, and the Wood Memorial champion has won the last 6 derbies or whatever, blah, blah. So you knew that you were leading up to Louisiana Derby has done it. Now it's like, okay, and I'm looking at a couple horses just on the list here. Superstock who just won the Arkansas Derby.
Right.
But hadn't won any of the races previous to that. And I think it finished in the money a couple of times. But that's good for the connections making money. But up until one of the Arkansas Derby had racked up 9 points. 9 points didn't get you in. So you had to win a race to get in, and now it's up there at the top of the heap. Okay,
right.
As far as it's guaranteed to be in, right? But
Yeah.
you've got a horse like, say, Midnight Bourbon or something that has been slogging away, and they're still in the field. And as you said, as long as I get in the field, as long as I get a decent post position, I get a decent jockey, I got a shot. Mm-hmm. It has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, it has. And me, like you mentioned about Superstock. So if we go by looking at, with Steve Asmussen, making it happen there, and then he brings in Ricardo Santana Jr., who rode the horse. And Ricardo's won a few races, but you don't go, man, Ricardo really is that top-notch Triple Crown one. Yeah, he's not. He hasn't been performance-wise, but he had a day. The horse had a day. And for the ownership and probably the trainer as well, along with the jockey, that day is good enough. The day is good enough because guess what that day got? The day got us in. The day now has people talking about us. And now we can try to build up on it. If it doesn't happen, we lose the Derby. Man, darn, we wanted to win, but so what? How many other horses are going to be left at home wishing to have an opportunity to make more money and get more visibility? I think that's the main ingredients for what's happening right now.
Well, that leads into the question that I asked you off the air, and I hadn't thought about it in the way that you described it. But we've also added in getting points for European races and races in Japan. And I wasn't quite sure in my mind exactly what that was worth because you're looking at some of those races and your points weren't that great. If I'm going to take a look at the numbers here real quick, say let's go back early last year and the Verdum Futurity Trophy, you win that one October 24th, do that, and you get to the, and I'm going to mispronounce it, sorry about that, the Fukurio in Nakayama, which it's your 40 points. Okay, well, that's a little something different. Or the UAE Derby, which now I'm going to lose my train of thought here, but that got you some points as well. And that's where we see Panadol with 40 points now coming in second. So the winner of that would have got 100 if they would have decided. Is it that we're trying to bring more, I don't know if diversity is the right word, or we're just looking at, we're going to get more exposure to a lot of people and expose the Derby races and all that to more people?
I would say, I think I would go with the latter, with them trying to get more exposure to more international audiences, right? Because if you have on a good day, what we do, 22, 23 horses in the Kentucky Derby, you still have they may do a cutoff at 18, 19, just in case, and then they had that extra group. But if you take one slot and you deem it available for an international horse, the best of the best over there from Japan, Nagasaki, wherever, somewhere over in Australia, then that allows them to go, hey, we're in the Derby, we're amongst the money, we're in America. All eyes are watching. What does it really hurt the Derby by allowing that to happen? It doesn't, because the best horses in America are going to get in the Derby, right? From what we know, unless they're hurt or somebody cheated or something.
Right.
Most of them, the best of the plot are going to get in. So what's wrong with, even if they have 39 points or how many points, whatever it is, however you deem it to be, so you let an international representative come in, and that means more cash, right? You know it's going to be more money for the Derby. It's going to be more money for this person. They might now breed. They might have opportunity to meet somebody. One of their horses may not be a great, may not win a race, but maybe it's a great breed. It's great to breed with another horse. So there's a lot of connections. You know how it is in Louisville during that time and beforehand with all of the trainings and the stopping at the stables, all of the timing and whatnot. There's a lot of opportunities to do business. So
right.
if you can do that international, like, hey, why don't you come on over and check us out? Okay, Mr. Mandela. Oh yeah, all right, I'll do that. He makes that trip, and you just never know. So I think there's a lot more to that than just basic, oh, we want to win a race.
Well, and you think about it, like I said, there are 20 horses in the field. How often have we went out there or wherever we go to and we said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put $50 on the horse that's 107-1 to win the Kentucky Derby. There are almost always 2 or 3 horses in the field that legitimately do not have a shot. If everyone else falls down, they still might not win. What's the harm in putting in a horse from Japan to fill that spot? And it may actually be that good. You just don't know because it hasn't run against that quality. So that's not a bad way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it too, though, let's be real, with the horses you're talking about, if you study horse racing and you watch how, if it's so difficult, well, we had to wait for so long from 1978 to whatever time it was to finally get a Triple Crown winner, how in the heck is some jockey that's going to come over here that really doesn't know the land? Plus, too, we know that Churchill Downs is awfully sloppy. It's a whole different ball game than normal. And then maybe somebody else that you now come over here that doesn't know the lay of the land as far as training and the horses are concerned. It's very difficult for them to win. It's hard for the regular jockeys to win. And you're just going to come over here and plop in? I take that bet 99.9% of the time because it hasn't happened that I can recollect. And unless you do some cross training or bring some other people over from America or whatever, or they have one of those things where you have a bloodline connection, lineage, right? As far as the great grandmother was from Secretariat, then
right.
There has to be something that makes you go, this horse is able, because you can barely,
right.
if you can barely win across the water, the pond, what makes you think you can come to Churchill Downs on the biggest day besides Breeders' Cup and win a race?
With all those things stacked against you, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of, and you hit on something that we do, and I'm sure other people do. I'm not saying that we're geniuses or anything, but we figured out early the importance of, the importance of a couple things. Let's start with jockeys, because I know we noticed the last couple of times that there have been those jockey, the dance. I want this guy. I want that guy, especially as we go to the Triple Crown thing. Give me, in a 20-horse race, give me 5 jockeys or so that it matters that they're riding more so than the post position, more so than the horse. And it could be good or bad. You might have a jockey that go, doesn't matter who he's on, that horse isn't going to win. But I'd prefer not to look at the negative. But give me 5 or so jockeys where you go, I don't even want to get into that. But we'll say, okay, they're going to pay more money for this guy. They're going to, no pun intended, jockey around the field to get him on the right horse, the right connection. And maybe this is a Steve Asmussen rider or a Todd Pletcher rider. So I've got him locked up. But you still may move him from horse to horse. Give me 5 jockeys because we know how important it is in another couple of weeks, who's up.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to go with John Velasquez. John Velasquez he's one of those guys that you
Money rider.
You want him on a horse that nobody thinks is capable. He's right. That type of guy. You want him on somebody that might be a 20-1 shot, 15, 12-1. John Velasquez, Erard Ortiz Jr. for sure. No doubt. The brother, of course, his brother, Jose Ortiz, right, as well. So that's 3. 4, even though he's a little older, he still has the potential. Javier Castellano. Castellano definitely has an opportunity to do that. I would say Mike Smith back in the day was a Mike Smith. And with the right horse, I don't think you see Baffert using as much as he did before.
Right.
You had Baffert using him before. And The last one I'm going to throw out there is, man, what is my man's name? Was it Gerous?
Jerome. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jerome.
yeah. Because he has moments. Now we got some other ones out there too, with Pratt and some other ones. But right off the top of my head, those are the guys. I mean, there were a lot more before that, but those guys right there, you almost can. I am not gonna say because there's some other things that happen, but you can almost put your money down to go. If I'm putting down an exacta box, or if I'm doing the trifecta, particularly exacta box, those I got 6 guys that are
that I'm gonna have it right.
Right, and then I might the other part too. The other part that's going to make a difference is if the horse is that good that we're talking about, and the jockey's decent, then you got to throw them into play too, because the talent sometimes can outweigh the jockey. And even though the jockey's getting in the way, may not let it be the best it can be, that still means it has a shot at making money for you. So you don't like a favorite. You don't discard the favorite. You know, as I'm watching, when I was watching the Kentucky Derby last year, and we're watching them come down the stretch, and it's like you're watching, also Robbie Alvarado as well. But you see John Velasquez, I'm sitting there watching come down the stretch, and the horse is in front of me was going in, and he started beating the hell out of this horse. And you like, that's Velasquez. That's what we expect.
Yep.
So you need those kind of guys that have the ability to make a horse perform when necessary, when it's right in the heart, right in the trenches of a major race.
I think what's interesting about those choices, a couple of them stand out. Mike Smith, to me, is on a pitch count. Mike Smith said, we're not going to ride him 18,000 times during the season. Mm-hmm. We're not going to ride him 12 times during Derby Day, but we'll get him on there when it's time for him to go. Because he is 50-some years old at this point. So, we'll be cool with him. I love and hate Arad Ortiz Jr. at the same time because he is so good that the horse he's on is going to be 1 to 3, or even worse than that. It's like, great, he won. I knew he'd win. I won 83 cents. Son of a... so it's great that he's that good for him, for his connections, but I don't think they're making him, or I'm not making any money off of it. There's nothing I can do there. And like I said, Velasquez, just a consummate, like you said, in the money. If you're going to say, I'm going to throw some money at a superfecta, and you aren't sure, always make sure you throw Velasquez in there. So that's pretty cool. But we had Manny Franco a couple of years ago. There's always somebody. Remember the few years we had with Calvin Burrell. It's like, wow. And, he'd probably still be there, but that's another story entirely. And remember Breeders' Cup where we just went, Garrett Gomez, good idea. Boom, boom, boom. So there's always somebody that gets hot. But, again, you mentioned the 3 or 4 of them, you go, that's great. We don't have to think about that too much. And the Ortiz duo, both brothers, it's not a bad idea to put them in there either. So it should be okay, but that's the beauty of a 20-horse field, is there's going to be somebody in there that you don't know of, that you can't do a lot of research on because there's not a lot available. Oh, well, maybe, and does Todd Pletcher trust this guy? Okay, well, if Todd Pletcher trusts the guy, maybe I should look at it. And that's the fun of it, and that's what also stirs stuff up. Because you should know, but they know better. Or they know more. I should look at it that way. If Bob Baffert put somebody on the back of one of his horses, it's something I should look at. But that just may be that particular time. So that'd be something. Okay, now that I got there, let's take a look at the trainers. Which trainers do you look at and say, it doesn't matter, they're going to have trained? And I don't know what it takes to condition a horse, and I don't know what it takes to condition 17 horses to get to this point. But somebody knows something. And we were talking about something about coaching. And sometimes you have to be more of an administrator or add that to the mix. That's how Todd Pletcher learned from Baffert, so on and so forth. You've got a few guys here that are going to be running multiple horses. How do they decide what they look at, or is it just like business as usual for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's usual for a lot of them because they know who they want, who they can trust, and who they want to ride. They had, I think the trainers have the owners know the great trainers, and then the trainers know their quality jockeys, right? They know who they prefer to have. So I got this guy, I want to ride Ortiz Jr. That's my guy. I can't get him on one John Velasquez. They go about that. And some of those guys are top notch. You look at, was it Doug O'Neill? Doug O'Neill's been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Richard Mandela. Mandela has been known to come up around the point. Also, we know about, you mentioned Pletcher, Todd Pletcher. Then, of course, the great Bob Baffert. You know Bob Baffert does his thing. Asmussen, as I mentioned, has been around for a while. Chad Brown. Yeah, as far as Chad Brown has been known to every once in a while kind of shake it up and go, wow, he's won. So you look at that, and Cox as well, B. Cox. So those are guys you just kind of go like, I know deep down inside, they have a clue. And when you say they have a clue, you say to yourself, they at least have won what we consider a quality race, right?
Right.
And the way that they train, I mean, everybody knows Baffert, right? Everybody knows how that goes too. Then, of course, I'm not sure if he's still around. I guess he is still around, but whenever he shows up, Dwayne Lucas, right? Whenever Dwayne Lucas shows up, he automatically gets some love. They've had that experience. I think a lot of these other trainers now have been under the tutelage of some top-notch, trained by some top-notch guys, and now they're kind of breaking out. Kind of like our Ortiz Jr. was as a jockey. He broke out after watching it.
Right.
Yeah, so you look back in the day, we knew about Vince Espinoza. We knew about Edgar Prado, guys like that. You mentioned Burrell. But when that new trend of jockeys, which is why Ortiz, everybody fell in love with him because he kept winning over and over and over. So those that were late to the party, everybody jumped in when they made the people that knew about him early on start to lose money. That's why it's always good. When you have that jockey and that trainer combination, you can see what they've done. Like Bob Baffert and John Velasquez, that's money. That's like 95%. Right. Every time you see that, I mean, I love it when they're not on the favorite. I love it when they come up. Yeah, you just like, okay, I'm going here because that's too easy. That's too great. And the reason why I say that is because our term called super horse, where a horse is so damn good that you just cannot do anything. It's just destined to win. We have not had one of those in a long time. You'll get a horse that'll run the first, maybe the Kentucky Derby, and then come to Preakness. You start shaking your head going, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Whatever it is, and that's how it is, which makes this whole thing lovely because unlike other sports, it's hard as heck to win a Triple Crown. It's hard as heck. That's why the jockeys and the trainers are so key to what's happening.
Well, something that you just made me think of, and it may be because of the way they've manipulated the way things are as far as qualifying, but I think in the last 4 years or so, we flipped the horse racing scene on its ear. It's flipped around a little bit. It's not as obvious if you're not involved in it, if you don't look at, from as far back as we go. But we see a trend in newer jockeys or younger jockeys or however it is. And I know that this happens all the time, but remember, you had guys that were riding the Mike Smiths of the world, Jerry Bailey's, and then suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, but suddenly we get Ortiz. We get guys, or the Ortiz brothers. We get newer guys, Manny Franco, that have come in, and they just kind of flip things around. Not to say that the older gentlemen aren't youthful exuberant. And You mentioned Dwayne Lucas. Dwayne Lucas and Bob Anderson. You've got Chad Brown to flip things around. And I don't think it's just because we've changed things to where it's no longer graded stakes earnings and it's now the point system. But somewhere in the mix of all that, we've changed the way that we do things. And I think it's a newer, fresher approach to everything. And we're seeing that. Again, we could go Derby Day. Oh, all right, Baffert, Jerry Bailey, boom, we're done. There wasn't much to think about. You pretty much had your day picked out before you got there. Now it's not as much up in the air, but you've got to look at it a different way. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think some of it has to do with the way that we've started looking or how we've controlled the environment. Again, it's now, if we want to work in different ways. So I just think it's a newer, fresher approach. And as you mentioned, getting European and Japanese writers and the audience involved, I think it's going to breathe more life into what's going on. Plus, you have more opportunities to bet the races and whatnot. So when we look at that, let's look at that real quick. The opportunity to bet races. Obviously, I live in Nevada here, so I have to go to a sports book to do that. But other places you can bet on various different platforms. Does that help? Or does that access make it less exciting? Or does that access make it, hey, I can bet any race now that I want, and now I'm more involved come Derby Day?
I think for the true horse fan, it probably takes away from the experience, because those that love horse racing, that will actually want to be, there's nothing, if you're a real horse fan, thoroughbred horse racing fan, there's nothing like being at the track or being close to the track to watch it unfold in person.
Right.
But with all the things that's going on, more people want to be involved with it. And therefore, with these platforms, it's easier now to, TV's doing everything. You can watch stuff on YouTube. I mean, you got, I'm not going to say all of the names because they're not paying us, but you got certain places you can watch it and you can get accounts. And as long as you have an internet connection, you can watch anything you want to and sign up for an account. You only have to spend money, really. You can do that and internet. That means you can watch on your phone. You can bet on your phone. So I think it's maybe perhaps increases the amount of people that are connected to it. But the real horse fans still probably want to be there at the track. But I think part of it too, you mentioned how it goes into in the play now is, there was a time where, our only exposure to real horse racing for a long time was the thoroughbred races, right? And that was always on major TV. So wasn't a lot of cable on there too. But now, like I said, you can go on YouTube and find anybody, which I think when you said the dynamic of the sport itself has changed, and the jockeys' actions have shown you that. Because how many times have we said, okay, this jockey's going to, Rad Ortiz, is he going to be in the Preakness? No, he's not going to be in the Preakness, because no longer, I'll just say this. There was a time where I think the jockeys had to go to the bigger races to get their money. So you had to go to all Triple Crown races. You had to be part of the Breeders' Cup. But now what we're finding now is that these owners are taking care of these jockeys, where a Rod Ortiz can go down to Keeneland and not be at Breeders' Cup, right? Because his money at Keeneland is guaranteed. If you don't win at the Kentucky Derby or a Triple Crown race or a stakes race, how much money do you make? If you're riding 8 horses, lose. Right. If you're riding 8 horses guaranteed or 12 races at your choice at Keeneland, that's guaranteed money. Winning money, the money from that is the extra money that you win is just a bonus. And that part that breaks down into what you mentioned before, which tells people now So I don't have to watch this on ABC, TBS, or whatever it's on. Now I'm following my jockey. So whatever, as long as I got cable network, I can pull up Keeneland, pull up TVG, and go, I can watch my guy. I'm not watching the rest of that stuff. I can watch my guy 8 straight races, and damn it, I can bet on him and get my money. And that's the way that things have changed. That's what a lot of these jockeys are doing. They're like, well, why would I go over here when I got guaranteed money? Granted, yeah, I want to win the Derby, but if I'm only going to get 3 races on the Derby, I got 9 over here in Keeneland. Hey, I don't know if the marquee races have as much prestige as they once did, according to specifically amongst the jockeys.
Well, now I'm going to say something, and you're right with that. If you are the average to above average racing fan, going back to Secretariat, let's go back that far. That seems reasonable. Do you know who the jockey was on Secretariat? I'm not asking you. I'm just saying, does the average person know?
No.
Okay. No. Right?
No.
We came in with Willie Shoemaker, Steve Cawthon, and then you might not know anybody until maybe Pat Day, Jerry Bailey.
Right.
You know, how many, again, it's the brand. Is there a brand for these guys? Not saying these jockeys that have ridden for decades and centuries are forgettable. I'm just saying they weren't a brand. They weren't part of, like, just put that little short guy on that, what it seemed like. Well, now these guys are their own brand.
Yeah. Or like you say, like a Lafitte Pinkay Jr., right?
Right. Yeah. That's a different name. That's stuck in my head, you know. But now they are a brand. Like you said, I can go search and see where my guy is going to be. And if he's my guy, he might be running in Santa Anita. He might be running in Aqueduct. He might be running at, you know, Turfway, wherever. But that's where he is. I'm going to go boom, 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 boom. And I'm going to bet on him for 8 races this day. He's at least going to bring me the money in 5. Wow. So again, I think it's changed a little bit. Not always for the better, not always for the worse, but it is different because now you have access that you didn't have before. Remember when you could get the daily racing form at the newsstand? And that was, wow, and who did that? But you did it coming up this week or this next few weeks. Then you could get daily racing form online. And that was like, well, am I going to play enough? Is it worth a subscription? Can I read what it is? Now, all that past performance stuff is available wherever because they want you to know, because they want you to think you know enough to be able to bet on it. So they put it out there and you go, oh, so this is the past performance at Golden Gate. Boom, got it. This was at Santa Anita. Boom, got it. This was at Louisiana down. Oh, and now you think you know because you get that more over information or false information, or how I'm going to look at it, and you know, okay, so now I know. So as you said, I think in the grain of things, Derby, Preakness, Belmont, 8, 10, 12, you know, even owners and the trainers aren't running as many horses in the Triple Crown races, you know, and maybe it's always down some from the Derby, but if you have a 7-horse field in the Preakness, there's something wrong there, I would think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, from that standpoint too, where people, it's calculated. It really is. It's calculated. Like, I think a lot of these owners are looking at it. How much money can I make? What makes more sense? What does that lead to? Okay, so if we can't win the Triple Crown, right? We lost the Derby. We can't win the Preakness. Do we go to the Preakness or do we go to Belmont because there's more eyes on Belmont? We have a better chance to win because it's a longer race, right? Our horse is going to be more rested. We think we can get a shot. Then after Belmont, the world is wide open. We win Belmont, then they're more likely we're gonna get a shot somewhere in that damn Breeders' Cup or something else, or the Woodman, whatever it may be. Whatever something else is going to be plateaued by us winning that Belmont. So there's a lot more calculation going where before you knew in every race that a horse, like back in the day, you mentioned affirmed in Alidar. You just knew Alidar was not going to sit out the Preakness.
Right.
Even though Alidar lost Kentucky Derby by a whisker to Affirmed and Steve Cawthon, they never in their wildest dreams would ever think about sitting that horse.
We're done. Yeah.
Yeah, now we're doing it because we want to stop this Triple Crown. We want to defeat the super horse. And that was just how it was. And now it's the calculations are totally off the wall. Like I said, now we're not gonna run him in here. You know, he's tired or whatever. He's exhausted. So we're gonna bring him back for the belt. It's so different now. So different.
Or we set out the Derby to run something else.
Yeah.
What? You didn't want the granddaddy? No, we're not going to run the Derby. We'd rather run the Belmont. Like, huh?
Yeah.
We qualified. We're not going to do that.
Right. But then at that point, it's like, well, since we can't win the Triple Crown, our next thing is we need to get Breeders' Cup. So we get the Breeders' Cup and we get in a race that we think we can win. Now that's what the next step is. So granted, we may not have been the creme de la creme when it came to this, but on that lower tier of a race, we can get into the juvenile fillies, right? And we can win that race in that Breeders' Cup. A Breeders' Cup champion is a Breeders' Cup champion, which means more endorsements, more opportunities to breed.
Stud fees, the whole
stuff,
right, yeah.
Everything, yeah. So opens the door for more opportunity for more mucho dinero. So, yeah, it is truly, we may not have known it before, maybe it was going on, but it is truly a more calculated business that people in the general public are allowed to see even more.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is very important there, is when you start looking at it's the business, and I'm not saying it wasn't a business before, because, you know, putting out a thoroughbred horse is not an inexpensive thing. I get that. But now it's like the way you made money before was you ran that horse like Cigar for 170 years or John Henry or something, like just put him out there, run, and collect your fees that way. Now was it Fusiachi Pegasus?
Mm-hmm.
You ran through the Triple Crown and did he even run in breeders? I think it just now put him out to stud.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, what? But you're not even through the 3-year-old to put him out to stud. But that's guaranteed, $10 million. Like, huh? What? Because we want to see the horse run, and we'd like to profit off of it too if we could. But their profit, they figure, is greater if you put it out to stud. Now, I don't know if that's a sustainable thing at all, where you say, we run the horse 3 times, and we put it out to stud, we get another horse out of it, we run it 3 times. Like, where are you making money from the horse racing? You're making money from the breeding, which is all fine and good, but if all you do is breed, it's not going to make you money as a horse. So as a runner. So I don't know if that's a sustainable model at all, but I understand it. So, and for those of you that cannot stand doing or listening to what I just said a few minutes ago, Ronnie Turcotte was the jockey on Secretary. And that would have driven me crazy. I've been thinking about that the entire time. So I'll say that anyway. What he was saying. But the idea of what we were going to do here today was we were going to talk about Derby prep, all that stuff. But as we get into it, I realize we haven't done an actual thoroughbred horse racing show for
Probably.
That sound about right? Yeah. So let's flip it a little bit. We've got another few weeks before we get into the Derby. So let's get into that a little bit. So the people that didn't follow us a decade ago can understand. We had the opportunity, and even though I came a decade ago, I'm going to do it again. Jim Gluckson, that's right, yeah, gave us a chance. And if you know why we're laughing, if you saw that show a decade ago, I butchered his name for the entire show. Anyway, gave us the chance. He was and he still is the PR director for, I believe, for the Breeders' Cup. and gave us the opportunity to go behind the scenes and see what was going on for the Breeders' Cup that was in Louisville a while ago. And from that, we were able to parlay our excitement and our love for horse racing into something a little more professional. So we were able to do a little bit more things like this. And we've gotten away from that because there's a lot of other stuff we'd like to cover. But give the people, if you would, an idea of what got you into this particular sport. And I do call it a sport.
Well, it goes way back. I mean, I remember the main thing was it started with my dad buying me a subscription to Sports Illustrated, right? And that my father's thing was the way he was going to educate me was to get me to read. So when you read, you learn new words and you comprehend. So that's how that goes. So he would buy stuff that he knew I would read because I was a sports fanatic. I was all about the stats and all other crap. So I would get Sports Illustrated whenever it came out weekly or whatever. So one particular time they had the Sports Illustrated, it was back in, I'm saying my age anyway, around 1977, 1978.
1816.
Yeah, basically. So that came out and they had I think on the cover, it was a picture of a horse. And they were talking about this horse that was preparing for the Triple Crown. And I'm like, horse racing, who cares? I know I heard the Secretariat, but I mean, who's really taking time? Anyway, so I would read Sports Illustrated cover to cover, right? And I started reading about this horse, and the jockey's name was Steve Carlton. He was 16 years old, right? And at the time, I was a teenager. So I was a teenager, and I just found it ironic and bizarre as heck that another teenager was riding a horse in one of the biggest races ever known to man. This was a lot of pressure and everything. And so I started reading it, and they're like, well, the race was coming up. So he's coming up and he's racing. And then I saw the colors and something about the colors, because I remember the colors were pink and black. And I was like, hey, why are you wearing pink? And I was like, he don't know no better. I mean, pink and black. So pink and black, and they're riding, and he's in a race versus Alidar and so many other horses. They win the race. And I was like, oh man, for real? And they said, well, don't forget, in 2 weeks, we got another race coming up, whatever it was. And then I was like, okay, well, he won. We'll see what he's going to do again. So again, of course, they moved to the Preakness, and he wins the Kentucky Derby by not a large margin at all. And they face again in the Preakness, and Alidar is giving him all the business. And Affirm wins again with Steve Carlton. I was like, damn, he done won 2 in the world. What? 16 years old. I'm like, that's my guy. Anyway, he goes on to the Belmont and then wins the Triple Crown. And I'm like, that's that dude I was reading about. And then at that point, I started learning more about just different things, how it worked. I started becoming more intrigued by it. I started watching more and more. And I never found another 16-year-old that I could connect with. But I started buying into it. But then I started really wanting to know how important was it for a trainer and a jockey to winning. And the other part of it too that really got me was once I started getting into it, I started looking at the lineage and the bloodlines. And that just kind of blew my mind. Because I'm like, how we're looking at Secretariat. And then of course we went on to Seattle Slew, and then of course I had to tell the story about the birds. I watching it where there was the birds were connected, the lineages back to Seattle Slew and Secretariat.
Right.
And then of course you get the first bird, which was Mind That Bird, and that's 50-1. And we hit that with Calvin Burrell. And then every time I saw another one lineage with a bird in it, those horses, Mind That Bird and, all kind of other birds made a lot of money off of it. And then you come back one year to the point where this how ridiculous and funny this was. My brother tells me, well, you see a bird this year in the Kentucky Derby? I said, no. He says, well, a bird is an animal, right? I was like, yeah. Well, what about Animal Kingdom? I was like, okay. And Animal Kingdom wins.
Yeah.
But it's stupid stuff like that. But the whole point of it is bringing it all the way back around, and then you get into your jockeys and your trainers. And to tell you the truth, I still, even though it doesn't always work, it's not 100%, I still stand by that formula of finding a good trainer,
right?
Good jockey combination, along with the owner if you need to, good jockey trainer combination with a horse with solid old school lineage, going back into their bloodline. I think that's money all day. I will probably go to my grave like that till something different happens. You just have to watch it. And of course, the jockeys have changed, whatnot, but for the most part, that formula sticks. You find a quality trainer, you find a good jockey, and then you check the bloodline of the horse, and you package that all together. Unless it's a dynamite super horse that's so dominant, then that's the way that you go. That's the way you make money, particularly the way you got to bet about horse racing, because consistency is key. And of course, when you look at how fast the horse runs, you think about the speed, the buyer's speed and whatnot, and all that is great. But the other part too that I'll say as I get off this point, particularly when the conditions change,
right?
When it is like in the Kentucky Derby has been known for being muddy all the time. It often rains there. Then you're going to need a quality jockey to take the reins of the horse and guide the horse out of the slop with the other 19 horses to show it down the road how to win. Put it in position to win and let the horse get back to being what it is. Oftentimes, some of the greatest horses, when it's muddy in different situations, never reach their potential,
right?
Because they don't have the jockey to guide them. I promise you, that is how it usually works.
Well, there are a couple of things in there that first of all, when we talk about lineage, that's the one thing that's key. And I have fallen in the other side of that, where I have bet on horses sired or the lineage comes from Mr. Prospector, has cost me at least a couple house payments, maybe even a car by now. So Mr. Prospector, because Mr. Prospector sired like every horse in the season one year. That was one busy horse. And each of them, when I bet on them, didn't do diddly. Going back to the Sports Illustrated thing, what was cool about that was you saw 16-year-olds in Sports Illustrated, but if they were in that little section, remember Faces in the Crowd? Mm-hmm. That's when you saw a 16-year-old. If you saw a 16-year-old in the main segment, it was usually a Russian gymnast or a female tennis player. And even then, there weren't that many of them. 16-year-olds didn't do anything. You didn't have guys in the NBA at teenagers. It didn't happen. And so you got to go back to Bob Mathias, I think, as a decathlete, to be 17 and be on Sports Illustrated. Didn't happen. You had adults doing stuff. And I kind of got the same thing, like, there's a kid. He could be going to school with me. And he's in I got to check this out. So yeah, that's kind of when I got into it too. And I think that's where most sports fans got into sports, is because of, to a lesser extent, Sport Magazine, Inside Sport, those kind of things. But, or the digest. But Sports Illustrated got you into, and next week we're going to have more sports. And next week we're going to have more stuff with the illustration, obviously, but actually articles and things. And you go, huh. So I did the same thing. I fell in love with, Dick Weber, bowling, all those things. Those, you go, oh, there's this and there's that. And they keep throwing stuff at you. They call it a sport. It's a sport. It's in Sports Illustrated. In horse racing, I'm like, okay, this is really cool. So what you do, and I know you do it, you may not think that you do it, you have in your head a spreadsheet, basically. And you're constantly figuring, how do these things match up? So I'm going to look at, let's sort by owner, let's sort by sire and dam, let's sort by trainer, let's sort by jockey, let's sort by buyer speed figures, let's sort by this and that. You jumble it all together and you go, the 3-horse. Mm-hmm. And everyone else is going, I don't know, because you have that knowledge and that experience, mm-hmm. and you've had it for quite some time. I just go, hey, it's wearing purple. Cool. Or it's got a name that means something. Hey, I used to do that, and it's named Champagne Power. We were drinking mimosas the other day, weren't we? That looks like a good horse to bet on. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. So that's pretty cool. And even when it works, they usually also bet on 17 other things we were drinking the other day. And it didn't, and they're smart when they name them that too. Like we've got how many bourbon ones in this race in the Derby field this year? Mm-hmm. Well, you don't think I'm going to bet on midnight bourbon? Come on. That's a pretty obvious one. So, but it's the idea of we're involved. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a background into that Breeders' Cup, that day we went to Churchill, to give people an idea. Again, we've been involved in this quite some time. I'm not going to go back into the birthdays and all that stuff that we started betting, but this gives us an idea of when we got into this professionally. And again, we go down to Louisville and we get treated very well, which I don't know if I'm surprised by that, but we were given the layout. We were in the media center, which for those of you who don't know, when you're in the media area at Churchill Downs, there's a betting window about 12 feet away from it, which is, I was shocked by, but now I understand it. Put your money where your mouth is, right? We're sitting next to some people that the layperson, Kevin Blackstone from ESPN, was right next to us, and a few other people. Nice setup. And Garrett Gomez went crazy. Won the pre-Breeders' Cup races and then the Breeders' Cup first day and I think a couple on the second day. But we also got to see the ins and outs, the behind the scenes. We got to see the horses, not just on the track, but, before they're on the track. We got to see how they set things up, where the photographers could stand, the people walking around. We got to see the behind the scenes stuff. And we said this in the show 10 years ago. If you don't understand the respect that people have for not only the racing, but the horses and the whole thing, it's amazing. Everything is, at least for that day, they treated everybody so well, and the care they had for the horses was phenomenal. It may not look like that when they're on the track and the guy's whipping them to get there, but that's the only time those horses are ever, I wouldn't say mistreated, but treated in a way that it wasn't like they're more important than everything else that's going on. So that's pretty, and then they get to, go out to stud after that, which is probably pretty cool too. And that gets us to where we see the business of horse racing. And not just the business of it, but the fan of it as well. It's something you can be excited about because it's relatively pure. Not always. There are some things that are bad about it here and there. You've got jockeys that are starving themselves for years to not, stay below their weight. I mean, there's some stuff that's a little weird about it. I get that. But for the most part, it's one of those sports where, because the horses don't care how much they're getting paid. So you don't have that, what's the word, the term, load management. I'm just taking this race off. That ain't going to happen with a horse. The horse is going to go out there and do what it's bred to do, try and win. So that gives you a better what's going on. The jockeys, though that money is changing a little bit, they get paid for winning a race. It's not, you can't throw a race and get paid. That's not going to work, And the trainers, I still don't understand trainers because I don't know what they do. That's something I have to figure out a little more. But to me, it's just a fascinating event that we get to cover. And this one is going to be even more so, I think, because it's so much different than it's been. First of all, we're coming off of last season, which I don't know what you call it. And this year it's going to be a little bit different, a little more interesting. If we put a gun to your head right now, who's the favorite?
Wow. Let me see. I like Concert Tour. I really do. I like Concert Tour because it has a lot of, you have Street Sense coming into connection with Street Sense, Bob Baffert, Joe Rosario connection, right? That's what we're looking at as well. Another horse too that will probably be secondary because I watched this horse win. It wasn't supposed to win because it was lightly raced, but it won a major race, and that's Known Agenda from Curlin, and had Todd Pletcher, the trainer Todd Pletcher, and the ride Ortiz Jr. And I want to look at one other one that I think, just because I like that connection, where was that horse at? There was a horse too that Jose Ortiz rode on. He came in second. Might have been Dynamic One. He came in second to his brother in the race.
Right.
So I like that. And last but not least, that's another jockey, even though he has not won all the time, but he can surprise you. Talamo.
Yeah, Joe Talamo.
Yeah. So, but Midnight, I'm gonna go with your Midnight Berman. I think Midnight Berman might surprise you. Oh, that's the horse. I'm sorry. Greatest Honor as well. That's what it was. Greatest Honor. But yeah, so those are a few of the horses, and mainly because what they've done in the past races. And of course, the jockeys that supposedly they keep the same jockeys that way. The other part too, giving you a little much, I should be charging for this. Anyway, giving you a little insight onto this is one of the other things that I definitely look at is when I look at the older races or as far as the horses and what they've won or not won, I always go back to the race itself. So let's say we're looking at the Belmont and it's a mile and a half, or the Kentucky Derby. I will go back to see if I can find any race of the same caliber that the horse ran in. So it's the same length. So what did you do at 9 lengths, right? This is a 9-length race on dirt. What did you do to kind of match up to see what is the percentages of what that horse? Now that may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but what did you do you ran this length 4 times. You were 1 for 3. What are the chances that you're going to now rise up against better competition to get it done? Or maybe you just got hot and you were just waiting to blow up. So that equates for me in the situation too, because even though I'm wrong, it's not many horses that may go 1 for 6 at the same length and come back and all of a sudden dominate. It doesn't.
Right.
So you got to equate that, put that in the equation as well. So that's just another added value that I look at in regards to how things are figured out.
Well, I look at the simple thing. Has it been winning? That doesn't always mean anything, but it means more than have they been losing. So I look at right now where we're at, Essential Quality. Has won everything it's been in. We were talking about up and coming Brad Cox. We're looking at Luis Saez. It's a horse that gets the job done. Now, that may change quite a bit in another couple of weeks. But right now, that seems to make the most sense because and again, Midnight Bourbon, a couple of horses that are solid are going to be right there. But you're looking at right now, today, when it doesn't make a bit of difference, why we're talking about, I don't know, that Essential Quality is one of those that go, okay, right now it's cool. But again, those things change, and that's the beauty of it. We're going to have more information. We're going to have more things we're going to mess with. Again, no pun intended. We're going to have jockeying for position with the jockeys. A lot is going to change in another week or so. So we're going to have to step back and take a look at it again. But right now, to me, I don't think anyone has distinguished themselves. It's kind of wide open, which is a beautiful thing of it. We also don't have that thing that we had a few years ago where this favorite dropped out, that favorite dropped out, that favorite dropped out. We're going to get as strong as a field, I think, as we're going to be able to get. Certain things will stand within the next few weeks, but it's going to come out pretty strong. This could be one of the best seasons we've had in a while. For just those reasons, everything is going to be solid where it hasn't been for the last 4 or 5 years. So it should be pretty cool.
Let me throw one last thing at you. Another one. I can't go against the formula. People call me out on it, so I got to stick to the formula. Medina Spirit with Bob Baffert and John Velasquez. For sure. Cannot get off that combination. They paid me last year.
Yep.
Paid me over the years.
Way to go.
Yeah, so I gotta that will be in the equation when we figure it out.
Okay. We're gonna leave it on this. What is you can give me the dollar amount if you want. what is the best Derby day that you've had? Not just the Derby itself, Derby day. What's the day when it all was said and done, you went, man, I just kicked some serious behind all over the place?
Well, it was on my birthday, and I bet on 6 long shots. And one horse was 25 to 1. The other one, the main horse I bet was 50 to 1. And my 2 brothers were with me in Las Vegas. And they basically on my birthday just gave me money. Like, I forgot how much money it was. Just like, here, just bet. So I took the money and I bet on 6 long shots. But this particular horse was 50 to 1. And I had it to win and I had it to show. I paid for everybody's trip. All 3 gentlemen, we stayed for a week. We stayed for a week on the Las Vegas Strip. I paid for airfare. I paid for the room and basically whatever money they took to get out there or whatever. Everything I paid for their trip, all in one race.
That's not bad. All right. Flip side of that. What's the, I don't want to bring back painful memories. What's the one that got away? What's the you went, how did I not see that? Or how did that horse not win? What's the one where you knew the horse was going to win and it didn't win? Or you didn't get the one who went, how did I not know that?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the ones I didn't bet that I already knew were going to win because for other reasons, but I'm going to leave that.
No, that's the point, though.
But
that's the story between you and I. No one else needs to know about that.
I literally was at the Breeders' Cup. And I'm trying to think, I was at Breeders' Cup and it was at Churchill Downs. I outsmarted myself. I tried a new formula with some different jockeys that normally didn't win. I mean, were not winning big races. So I decided I wanted to try something new instead of going with what I knew. And unfortunately, that cost me. So I think I won 2 races though in 2 days. It was ugly.
Ooh.
And the problem with that is the Ortiz brothers, I just mentioned to you, were long shots. And I would have had them in the exact bet, and I would have had one to win. So basically, a $10 bet, I would have made $855. And I knew it.
Yep.
I knew it. I didn't, but I was trying this new formula. And I even wrote an article on a Reality of Sports that says, stick with what you know. Don't change the damn thing. If I wrote an article about it, that hurt, because I don't write a lot of articles lately.
Yeah.
But if I wrote an article about it, the key to success in horse racing, betting, stick with what you know. And I have not went away from that anymore. And I'm back on track a little bit. I still could have used that money anyway.
Well, mine of that, I won't say anything about some of the good ones because usually it's came off something else. But mine was, we were at the Imperial Palace when that actually existed. It's now part of the Q or the Quad or whatever the heck it is. And we were upstairs in the sports book, and we were there all day. And
sorry.
I was doing well, but not fantastic. And I got the Derby horse, and it was a nice price. It was a nice price. And someone said, "Well, having a good day?" I said, "Well, yes and no." So what do you mean? You hit the Derby, didn't you? Like, yeah, but I bet on so many other things that it would have had to win 4 times for me to actually make my money back. It was the idea that I did get it right, but I also got 7 other things wrong in the same race that I think I made like $9 on the whole thing. So that was in the planning stages and the learning of what you're doing. Understand, you have a lot of options of what you can bet. But as you're planning that out, also understand that if you're going to win, you should at least win something. Don't win and still lose at the same time.
But think about it too. Probably the other part of it too. Let's be real. On that day,
I think I learned from there.
Hey, but on that day, let's be real too. it didn't help you that we still had an amount to pay on the room, and I paid straight cash. And I won that day on selected races that I chose. And and I bet my girlfriend's name. And won the derby. Ooh, and I got flowers. Did I get flowers? Or we got breakfast? We got breakfast in bed.
You got breakfast in bed.
Yeah, that weekend too. Yeah, that was a hell of a weekend. Anyway.
Yeah.